Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Friday, August 31st, 2018, and this is our weekly country roads with Winston Shrout. And we have Winston with us. How are you, Winston?
Well, I'm here willing and able, so we'll get on with it.
We both have some announcements to make before we get into our material. Today, Winston is going to talk about equity interest recovery. So, and I know he will go into explaining all of that. And just realize these are educational series, country roads. So you have to kind of, there's a premise that you have some understanding of the previous material that was discussed in earlier country roads in order to build on, because some of these topics might be difficult for people to understand. And so Winston will go into that with a few announcements himself, and I'm going to make a couple of announcements. I just wanted to put it on the record that the GoldFish Report did receive a potential threat warning, and we want to make it very public that because then more eyes will be on us and we will have more protection and so forth. I really don't think that we present anything that is not, found plentiful on the internet, but there are, you know, uh, as you all know, forces out there who want to censor all of our, especially conservative commentary. So, and we're, going to stand our ground, and we're hoping that the president will back that. I wanted to put that on the record. Also, I wanted to just mention that people know from our last report that WordPress has deleted our blog, and we have put in several notifications regarding our blog, and I'm sorry, several appeals to this decision, and uh, none of them have been responded to. So I'm going to just screen share what this blog looks like at the moment, because it's just a little sad that it has to come to this. But here it is. The WordPress Goldfish Report is no longer available. This should concern everybody, because these entities, these companies who provide these services, do not have any right whatsoever to limit free speech. They are a public utility, and you can't, even on Netflix, nothing is censored. You get to watch whatever's there. You get to select what you want and not select what you don't want. You know what I mean? So this is very, very serious. So I wanted to bring that to our viewers' attention. And you can always go to our website at thegoldfishreport.com, and you can access all of our links for all of our media. We have a 24/7 news feed on Facebook. We have a 24/7 Twitter feed. We have, of course, our Goldfish reports, which are on our BitChute and YouTube channels, and we also have our archives. Now, please. That's a separate channel. Realize that, because it's a separate channel. But those links will be on thegoldfishreport.com, and you can access all of them from there. So, Winston, we have uploaded lots of the previous country roads that we made reference to in our more recent
Yeah.
reports, where we were talking about referencing them. So they're all going to be up pretty soon. So we've got about, I would say we have about another, um, you know, maybe another week, and then we'll have everything restored. So, having said that, I just wanted to make one comment about Q, about the latest posts, and it does look like there's definitely um, some some progress being made geopolitically, or actually, I should say politically, at least on our, well, both geopolitically. But he's referring to some posts where I'm going to just screen share for one moment. Uh, because there's been some speculation, and I think well-intended people sometimes are a little bit misguided. And I think that I do know what he's referring to here. These are Q's latest posts, and I don't expect anyone to be able to read these in detail on the video, because the video quality on YouTube is deliberately very poor. They deliberately change the quality of our video. So they give us very, very bad quality upload videos now, and on our new channel on YouTube. So we're not friends with them, are we, Winston? We tried to be friends with them. They didn't want to be friends. Um, this is referring to satellites that were taken offline. Snow White 7 offline, Snow White 6 offline, Snow White 3, Snow White 4, 3, and so on. Then there's Corona, and then, of course, Big Bird. So what this is talking about, blind eyes in the sky. So for I think certain agencies that they were using this, these agencies are now, I think, going to be in the dark, and that's really what it's referring to. So the disruption. Uh, so I guess there was some strategic reason to choose these. I don't know exactly what that is. It could refer to perhaps just the CIA. It could refer perhaps to the FBI, or it could refer to the NSA. I doubt it's the NSA because it seems like the good guys from the NSA are part of the alliance helping Trump, but there's also other people at the NSA perhaps who are not. So it looks like there's good progress going on, and I'm glad to see that because I really wanted to give hopeful messages to our viewers. That's really, you know, we report so much on all the corruption that goes on, and so we really want to provide some hope that there's definitely change on the horizon. So with that, I will hand it over to Winston. Thanks for waiting.
Oh, well, thanks for all that. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, when this Q entity posts some things and then other people do research and bring information out and so forth. And you could probably spend all day just reviewing a lot of those things. I just, listen to some of the comments and whatnot. I'm not a Q researcher. I'm interested to see as things develop. And but anyway, yeah, you can get a lot of information. If you're not savvy on some of those things. To me, it's just more of the same because corruption is corruption, and there's a lot of it. And the corruption has invaded everything. And of course, I always attribute that corruption and the infusion of all this corruption right back to the corrupt money system, because that's the basis of all of it. And there's a lot of information on the internet now about what's called the collapse of the financial system. And I don't like that word. I don't like that word because it puts fear into people's minds. And so rather than use the word collapse, I use the word correction. In other words, the global reset and all these kind of things, it's a correction. Now, are some of the bad elements of our financial system going to go away? The answer is yes. They're going to be removed. They are being removed. And so, like I say, again, it depends on people's attitude. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? And so, we have to, in our mind, we have to look at some of the things that are being reported. And your attitude is a glass half full or half empty. Now that would determine what direction your thought process goes. And so if you look at the concept of the word collapse versus the other word, which is correction, I think I would prefer to use the word correction because that gives people hope. If you say collapse, then you're giving the people the idea of, it makes people despondent, wants to make them give up and say, well, the whole thing is just going to come crashing down. What can I do about it? So I don't use that word collapse. I prefer to use the word correction because when we correct something, that means we're going towards something better. So does that kind of make a little bit of sense to you?
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it is better because I think that they talk about market corrections, so it's not the
Yeah.
first time we've
Yeah.
heard that. So it's not that it's unfamiliar to people. It's just that some people who I guess aren't wordsmiths, you know,
Yeah.
look at it, I think, kind of just black and white, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, so
Well,
thanks.
we want to give people hope. We don't want to put them into depressions and all those kind of things. We want to give people hope. So we have to be careful of the words and the connotation of words that people will ascribe when we, make certain statements and so forth. So I just want to throw that in, to kind of get, uh, a good flavor for some of the things we're talking about. Now, today, to start things out, I wanted to give a couple little funnies. Like I say, laughter is the best medicine.
Mm,
And so I found a couple of things
uh-oh.
are pretty darn funny. So
Good.
I'll just screen share this
If
first
Winston
one here.
thinks
I
it's
got a
funny, I
couple of
know
them
it's
really.
going to be funny.
Oh, this is really funny.
Oh no, look at his expression on his face.
Yeah, who is your real friend? He said, now the guy said, this really works. If you don't believe it, just try this experiment. Put your dog and your spouse in the trunk of the car for an hour. When you open the trunk, which one is really happy to see you? So again, the title there, who is your real
That's pretty funny.
friend?
It's funny.
Oh yeah, it's just a little funny thing there. And then this other one, I wanted to another little
I
funny.
really liked, and I think the viewers would vote on this, Winston, that your how to start a fight jokes
Oh
they
yeah.
have to take the top place. So viewers, tell us what you think, okay? Does Winston's jokes, the ones called how to start a fight, those had me in stitches,
Oh
honestly.
yeah.
Love those.
Yeah, you got to have a little bit of humor. Well, this next one here is a little story. So I'll just kind of read through it here. It says an old prospector shuffled into town, leading an old tired mule. The old man headed straight for the only saloon to clear his parched throat. It says he walked up and tied his old mule to the hitching rail. It says as he stood there, brushing some of the dust from his face and clothes, a young gunslinger stepped out of the saloon with a gun in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. It says the young gunslinger looked at the old man and laughed, saying, "Hey, old man, have you ever danced?" The old man looked up at the gunslinger and said, "No, I never did dance. Never really wanted to." Anyway, it says the crowd had gathered up as the gunslinger grinned and said, "Well, you old fool, you're going to dance now," and started shooting at the old man's feet.
Mm-mm.
The old prospector, not wanting to get a toe blown off, started hopping around like a flea on a hot skillet. Everybody was laughing, fit to be tied. It says when his last bullet had been fired, the young gunslinger, still laughing, holstered his gun and turned around to go back into the saloon. The old man turned to his pack mule, pulled out a double barrel shotgun, and cocked both hammers. The loud clicks carried clearly through the desert air. The crowd stopped laughing immediately. The young gunslinger heard the sounds too, and he turned around very slowly. The silence was almost deafening. The crowd watched as the young gunman stared at the old timer and the large gaping holes of those twin barrels. The barrels of the shotgun never wavered in the old man's hands as he quietly said, "Son, have you ever licked a mule's ass?"
Oh no. Oh no.
the, the gunslinger swallowed hard and said, "No, sir, but I've always
I just
wanted."
wanted to. Oh my god. I've always wanted to. Oh my god. Ew.
Anyway, it says there are a few lessons for us all here. Never be arrogant.
It's funny, Winston.
Oh
It's
yeah,
funny.
I just gotta have a good laugh about things, you know.
Yep.
We're going to get into a few serious things here uh, that you know. So I thought we better start out with a good chuckle, you know, before we started on some of these.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Start out. You can also start it out with one of those how to start a fight. I just love those.
Well, we can go
I
back
just love.
over them sometime, maybe.
I love the one about the mother-in-law's gift. Do you remember that one, Winston?
Yeah, I bought her a funeral plot.
Yeah.
She
Why don't you
complained
tell it? Why
because
don't you tell it? So one year, the son-in-law, right,
yeah, yeah.
bought his
For
mother-in-law.
Christmas, he had bought his mother-in-law a funeral plot. And so the next Christmas, he didn't get her anything. And she asked him why he hadn't gotten her anything. He said, because you didn't use the one I gave you last year.
That's me. I love that. I love that one. If
And
you
then,
had an
and,
ex-mother-in-law like I did, like I do, you would really think that's funny. You would really get some satisfaction out of that.
yeah, yeah. Well,
That's
like I
good.
say,
I like that one.
oh yeah, yeah. Every once in a while, you got to stop and just have a good laugh about something,
Uh-huh.
you know. Because, like I say, we get into some of these serious things that
That's
go
funny.
on, and you know, if you get bogged down in some of the things that are happening, you know, and this, you know, hey, this go and find something funny. Like I say, I look on the news, you know, look at all the YouTube things they're talking about, you know, in the Congress and the president and Q and all those kind of things, you know, and I don't see a whole lot of laughter
I
in
I
there.
think
So
I think we should start Winston's comedy hour.
no,
Well, I see Winston really has the art of telling a joke, and he knows I don't. So,
well,
you really have the pause, the prose. You have the prose for joke telling. So,
well, it's about yeah, comedy is about delivery.
yeah,
You know, you have to be able to deliver it, you know, in such a way that you know the suspense builds up. Like that story of the old prospector, you know,
uh,
suspense was building up. You know, then he pulled out the double barrel shotgun, and then all of a sudden that young gunslinger was pretty much willing to do what the old timer said.
yeah. Well, I if I had a little bit more sleep, I think I would have. I'm a little on the sleepy side this morning. So, but it was very funny, and the other ones, and I love.
Well, maybe next time I'll tell the Pancho Villa joke. But anyway, can't spend all morning on storytelling. So,
Yeah, well, do
but
Winston's comedy hour though. I like that idea. I do like that idea.
well, maybe we can do something like that.
Do a special. Get the best jokes we can find just to cheer people up.
Yeah, we can do that, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're really here for. Like I say, if we interject a little bit of humor every once in a while, I think it goes over pretty good with folks, you know. But you know, sometimes you have to get downright serious, and
Yep.
so you know, a lot of these reports that we give, some of them are for information, some of them are for warning, and some of what I want to give this morning is for warning. And I was looking at, I'm sure a lot of people look at Gary Laraby's website with some of the different things that he puts on. And so, you know, every so often I check to see what interesting things he might have put up. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days ago, I looked at it and he had something like 6 different entries by this Russell Gould. Oh man, uh, you know, I think I need to say a little bit about that. It's unfortunate that perhaps Gary didn't know what I know, or he had never put those up. Because let me explain. Let me just so people know what I'm talking about. It was these reports here about Russell J. Gould on a mission to save America, becomes most powerful man in America. Now, let me express my opinion of that in 2 words.
Mm.
Bullshit. And so let me explain my experience that I've had in this area as a warning to people, because it's not as it appears. I mean, the public presentations that are made, by Russell and David Windmiller and stuff like that, are a little bit different than when you get down to personal experiences.
Mm.
And so I have had those personal experiences, and that's why I want to warn people. Because I don't know, probably about a year or so ago, a fellow I knew and respected, he sent me an email and said, "Hey," he said, "you got to look at this about what this procedure and stuff for court that Miller's putting out." He said it's so very successful, and Winston, you just need to get involved in this. I said, "No, I don't. No, I don't." And he said, "No, but it's working and everything's going so good. We're getting so much done using these procedures and stuff, And okay, so let me go back and refresh my personal experiences. Now, this is not secondhand information. This is firsthand. These are things that actually I experienced and was involved in. First time I run upon David Windmiller, or David hyphen Win full semicolon Miller. I was back in the 90s. Someone in our community down in St. George, Utah, had come upon Miller and had invited him to do a workshop there in St. George. And so somebody told me about it. So I said, well, yeah, I'll go and listen to what he has to say. So he put on a presentation, and this is, the early days. This is the early days. And so David put on a pretty good presentation. I mean, he was talking a lot about Title 42, talking a lot about, language. He did give some good points. Like, for instance, he said, if you want to understand statutes and codes, he said, read them backwards. He said, they'll make more sense to you if you read them backwards. So I tried it out, and he was exactly right.
What do you mean? What do you mean read them backwards?
Literally read them backwards out loud, word for word. Go take any statute. If you read it, from top to bottom, left to right, you'll become so confused. He said, read them backwards. And so start at the bottom with the last word and just read it out loud backwards. And it'll make a whole lot more sense to you than if you read it, top to bottom, left to right. And now what had, caused him to come up with that, I don't know. But that was good information. And so David put on a present, I think about 2 days worth of it. And again, he had some real good points about the flag. And of course, at that time, a lot of quote unquote patriots, were worried about the flag and this and that. And David had done quite a bit of work in that area, quite a bit of research that he, put out for information and so forth. And so it went on like that. And one of my friends who attended it, because he was, just a little bit what you call psychic or whatever. I said, watching David, I said, do you see an aura? Does he have an aura? He said, no, he doesn't. And so that kind of put me on to thinking about, a little bit about the information. Why was that information being given by someone who didn't have an aura? And so I was just, it put a few questions into my mind of what was the intent. And so I had to kind of, measure the subsequent things with what David was putting out, from that perspective. And so it kind of put a little question mark in my mind right off the top of why that would be. And so anyway, like I say, I can't see auras myself. And so I can't say, did David have an aura? But this other fellow who could see aura said he didn't have one. Now that, that if that's true, and I'm not saying it is or it's not, but if it is true, then that would give someone cause to reflect. For people who understand energetics. Now, David did say there had been some kind of, I think David had been a welder at one time, worked as a welder. He claimed that he could weld with both hands at the same time. Maybe he could. There had been some kind of thing. I forgot what exactly it caused it, but there had been some kind of brain injury or something like that. And he said he never slept. He said that during the 24-hour period, he might just sit down and close his eyes maybe for 15 minutes or something like that. But otherwise, he said he was awake all the time. That kind of,
No aura, awake all the time. Sounds like a vampire.
it kind of worries you just a little bit, when energetically, it kind of worries you just a little bit, when somebody would make a statement like that, which certainly indicates that whatever's going on with this fellow is not normal. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's not normal. And so we need to take a look at, the things that went on. And then I didn't have any more experience with David for a good while. And then all of a sudden people were saying, David was out because David was proposing a new language. It's what he calls verb language. And, some of it makes pretty good sense if you look at what he's saying, because he's always looking for balance in sentences, balanced sentences, no run-ons, things like that. And so he makes some pretty good points about different things. But then he decided that he was going to go to some of the native tribes and whatnot and rewrite all their treaties in this new language.
Oh no!
And so he went to, I had some videos. Somebody sent me a video of a presentation I think it was in Hawaii, to the native people there. He was wanting to rewrite all their treaties, and I think he went to some of the other native tribes from time to time in an effort to rewrite their treaties using this language. And as it turned out, David had not invented that language. He had taken it from someone else. That's okay. I got no problem with that. But David was not the inventor of that language. And then when he was writing contracts and so forth, he was writing contracts using this language and so forth. And we got to investigating around and so forth. And these contracts, as they stood, were very similar to the old Levitical contracts, that the Levites would, in the Old Testament kind of venue. So, like I say, we're doing some investigating and looking at it. And then a friend of mine, my old Marine Corps buddies, one of the old timers, he had invested quite a bit of time in writing contracts, using the method, that David was talking about. And he had basically taken a court judgment. He was fighting a fight, civilly down in Arizona over some different things, whereas people were being, some real estate people were in collusion with some of the local judges, and they were literally stealing property from people, literally. And so he had gotten into a court battle, judgments were rendered. He wrote a contract using some of David's stuff, had taken that offshore to a magistrate, I think in one of the African countries. I forgot which one now. I could probably go back. I think maybe it was Zambia. Anyway, a magistrate there had taken, his judgment, the contract that he had written, using David's technology. So he had sent that for adjudication to an international magistrate. The magistrate had found in his favor. It had involved a great deal of postal technology, which I'll go over in just a minute. But he was using Red Fox stamps, and there's a whole technology involved with Red Fox stamps and I don't want to get into that, but there's a whole. Oh man, it gets very, very, repeat, very, very deep.
Mm.
And but anyway, but what had happened was as a result of sending that judgment over to Africa or Zambia or wherever, he was expecting to get that back because he wanted to use that judgment, for various things. Now, what had happened, the judgment got stolen. Now, I will say that before it left the United States, that judgment, that contract that he had written on that judgment, was signed off by Janet Reno and one of the undersecretaries of state before it left the country. And so this is some of the technique and so forth that David was proposing. So that judgment left the country with those seals and all kinds of things on it to a magistrate in, I think it was, let's just say, an African country. The magistrate there who found in favor of it, but then all of a sudden the whole thing disappeared. And so my friend couldn't get it back. And so he didn't know, what had happened to it. And then eventually, a year or two later, all of a sudden he was contacted by I'm not sure if he was a trustee, but this fellow that called him was associated with one of the major Native American trusts in Canada. And he called my friend and said, "Hey, I got something here that belongs to you." He said, "What is it?" And he told him, he said, "Well, how'd you get that?" And the guy was kind of nebulous on his explanation of how it had ended up with that native trust. And so anyway, he delivered it back to my friend. So now my friend is looking at it and say, "Well, I finally got the darn thing back, so let's see what can be done with it." Because it technically could have been put into a trading program because of the value in it, because the judgment was measured in gold. All right, so now you got a gold certificate or a gold document, which would be useful in the international trading market. So he started shopping around with it to see what could be done. And so eventually he put it into my hands to see what I could do with it. And at that time I was associating a great deal with the financial minister of the Knights of Malta. And she had formerly run the trading desk for Barclays there in London. So I put it in front of her and she said, "Oh yeah, I've seen that." I said, "Where did you see it at?" She said, "In London." I said, "Really?" And so we eventually traced it down. Somehow the Prince of Monaco, there's all kinds of crazy things going on with that.
Wow.
But that judgment, which was in gold, had been traded on without his knowledge, and he was the owner of it. Now, how did David figure into all that? I don't know, with the exception that at another occasion I went to a seminar. I think some people, I think it was in Las Vegas maybe, people had gotten Rice McLeod. I've spoken of Rice before. They had gotten Rice to come, and give a presentation. I think it was like a 2-day thing that I attended, where Rice spoke. And then one of the people who was at the seminar came up to me and said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Well, what seems to be the problem?" Well, she had done the same thing with one of these David Miller type contracts, these judgments. She said, "I can't, David won't give it back to me." And she wanted me to help her retrieve this judgment, that she had put into the hands of David, and God only knows where it went. Because again, like I say, my other friend, that thing had already been traded in Europe. And where all that trading money and everything went to, I had no idea. There was no way to trace it. Now, items like that, can only be traded twice on the international market, and then they're no good for trade. Because when he had put that into my hands, he said, see what you can do with this. And so I said, okay. So like I say, I had shown it to this financial minister, and she'd made some comments on it, that she'd seen it. I said, where'd you see that at? And she said, London. Apparently while she was running the trading desk. And so, I mean, I didn't get much more information out of her on that occasion. But then when he put that when it was given back to him from the representative from the Native Trust in Canada, it was in his hands. He put it in my hands. He said, Winston, go see if you can do something with this. And so I did. I went into the corporate offices of Wells Fargo Bank there in Las Vegas. And I took it with me, and I took it in. So like I say, when you go in, you say, what are you here for? I said, well, I have some commercial paper here I wanted to do something with. And I think I talked to about 3 people before I was finally sitting in the desk of the lady who was the vice president in charge of trade. And she says, what do you have? And I showed it to her. I said, I've been put in possession of this. I'm representing the owner of this paper. We like to see if there's some kind of, trade that could be done to get some value from this. And she said, well, let me check into it. Is it okay if I copy a few of the pages? And I said, yes, that'd be fine. So she copied some of the pages, from that contract judgment. I said, I'll get back to you. And so I left. And then about 2 weeks later, she called me. Said, no, we're not interested in that paper. Okay, now why wouldn't they be interested in that? Because she did diligence and found out it had already been traded twice. It was of no value for trading. Now, for people, way back in those days, I mean, this is back in, I don't know, the early 2000s when all this was going on. And so, I kind of, after those experiences of my own personal friend and this other lady who came to me and asked me, was there any way I could help her get her contract back away from David? And so, just by inference, it didn't sound to me like that, things were exactly above board.
Right.
And so, from that experience, I said, well, I don't think really anything I want to have to do with David. It don't seem like he's above board with people. And so, I can't say that David did those things, but the inferences were there. And so then anyway, sometime after that, a friend of mine called me up and said, hey, and he was friends with this original fella, that I'm talking about, this old Marine. He said, hey, we need to go to Wyoming. I said, what for? He said, well, there's a guy up there that's doing a lot of interesting things. He said he's using some of the David Miller stuff, and on and on. And I said, well, okay. I didn't have anything to do, so we jumped in the car, and went up to Wyoming to meet with Russell J. Gould. Now, Russell and David had been partners for a long time on different things. At that particular moment, they were kind of split the sheets a little bit, because David was mad at Russell because of what Russell had done in 1999 and 2000. Now, as I have mentioned, the bankruptcy, from the original 1789 situation had finally ended in September of 1999. That was why Bill Clinton had come right out and said, I'm the last United States president, and he was, under the Constitution. And when that bankruptcy ended, that left all the offices that were established under the Constitution void. And so Russell, knowing that, Russell's really a smart fellow. He knew history. He'd studied it all. And so he had gone in and filed for those offices. So Russell figured that he was the commander in chief. He figured he was the postmaster general. He figured he was this. He figured he was that because he had gone and filed on those offices where nobody else had. And so David was kind of upset with him because he had preempted David doing it.
Mm.
And so they were just a little bit at loggerheads about what had happened at that time, when we were going to visit him with Russell. So I think, oh boy, this is really getting deep here. So anyway, we spent some considerable time, talking to Russell about, these concepts and so forth. And he was doing a lot of postmaster general stuff and writing contracts. And, and what he said made pretty good sense, from one point of view. Now, the point of view that I'm going to refer to is that at one point, I asked Russell, I said, how did you come by all of this knowledge about postal technology and some of these other things? And he said, as it turns out, David's father and uncle were closely associated with the Rothschilds in Europe. And he said they had provided to the father and the uncle certain Masonic books. And he said David had access to that. He said, I've had access to them. He said, I've read them. He said, I understand those things. And so what David and Russell were relying upon was the Masonic knowledge that had come from the Rothschilds in Europe. Now, you just think about that for a minute. Because at one point, we went with Russell, and he was going down to the post office doing certain things, and he told us about what he was doing and everything. And then at one point in conversation with him about some legal things that he was doing in the local court, he said, well, he had done a certain thing, certain paperwork that he had created and put into the court. He said, you understand that, don't you? I said, no, I don't understand it at all. Oh, he said, that's right. He said, you would have to be at the 91st level of masonry to understand that. I think, my hell almighty. Of course I don't understand it. But he did. And why was it that he understood what it was he was doing? Because of these books that he had access to that came from the Rothschilds in Europe. Now, okay. So if that's the basis of what Russell has to project, and unfortunately, Gary Larrabee, was not informed about some of those things, and Gary put all that information up, and people trust Gary, to put up good information and stuff. So all of a sudden, now we got Russell blasted all over the internet again, and I object to that for the reasons that I've spoken of here. Because in conversation with Russell, like I say, he's I forgot, he has Native American heritage, I think from his grandmother, a different thing. But he's a real sharp, smart guy. And anyway, at one point, he had told me that he was doing black magic. He told me, described about going to the cemetery at midnight on a certain date, doing certain weird things. He was doing black magic. He told me he can make time stand still, and he told me on some of the occasions when he did that. And I won't rehearse all the things he told me, but after those conversations and so forth, I've become thoroughly convinced that Russell J. Gould, consequently David Wynn Miller, are not people I want to be involved with. And so this deal here that Gary inadvertently put up, Russell J. Gould on a mission to save America, bullshit. And he says he becomes most powerful man in America, bullshit. And if people listen to this and believe this crap, then you're forewarned. You're forewarned.
This is notice.
Well, it is.
That's
So I'm
right.
not putting up with this. But, I mean, if you go back in history and look at all the different things, and oh, gee, here, hold on a minute. All right, let me get rid of this now. But what I'm saying is, don't believe everything you see coming across the internet. I mean, in this particular situation, I have prior experience, personal experience. I'm not blowing smoke. And so I've had these personal experiences at one time when I was up there with Russell and some of the others that was associated with him. They were wanting to have a meeting about, I forgot what the meeting was about, but they were discussing various things. And then all of a sudden, someone called me on the phone. And this individual had been involved, I shouldn't say been involved, is always involved in black operations. Always. He called me on the phone and started asking me about this. And I said, wait, what's this phone? I mean, I was scratching my head trying to think, what's this phone call about? And I said, well, did you really call me because you want to talk to Russell? He said, yeah. I said, well, okay. So I called Russell out to the front room of his house. And I said, this guy wants to talk to you. And the first thing the guy said, he said, what's that there in front of you? And as it turned out, it's the fellow that had the house. He had a lot of taxidermy because what it was a taxidermy stuffed fox that he had, there in his living room. And so he said, well, it's a stuffed fox. And so this guy told him, he said, get out of that room. He says, they can see everything that I see. And he was looking into that room, this guy that called on the phone. So we went outside so they could hold their conversation about whatever thing they were wanting to do. And like I say, there are so many flags that pop up around Russell, around David, and all these kind of things. I'm just warning people, don't take these things at face value. There's things in the background you don't know about. I know about them because I have firsthand experience with it. So again, like I say, it's unfortunate that Gary, somebody sent that stuff to Gary, and Gary didn't have the knowledge I got about these things. He went and put them up. And so I'm encouraging people not to watch. If you want to watch it, go ahead and watch it. But I'm just telling you, no good thing's going to come from it. And so I'll just leave it off of that. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm just a little bit interested in. Um, it just seemed like so it was pretty much a scam where he was looking for people with these things that they could monetize and keep, but never give the money to the people. That's
Yeah, I think David was dishonest with the people he was working with. I mean, the contracts, the contract judgments and so forth were valid. It works that way. But what was happening is that people trusted David to make those placements. And then, like I say, eventually when I took that one contract judgment from my friend that took it into Wells Fargo, they did diligence on it and said, no, we're not interested in that paper. And why wouldn't they be? Because it had already been traded twice. It can only be traded twice, and then it's no good for trading. And so it had already been traded twice, and that's why Wells Fargo, this lady, that was the vice president down there in Las Vegas, she said, we're not interested in that paper because it was no good for trading. Okay, so it obviously had been traded twice. And
well,
why did not my friend get the value or any value whatsoever from those trades? He was cheated out of it. See what
yeah.
I mean?
Well, the funny thing is, and it's not funny, just peculiar, is that oftentimes people who are promoting that they can get into these trading platforms, and invest your money and things like that, unless you know someone who's gotten money out of it, I would be very, very careful about.
Unless you got high political connections, don't even waste your time.
Right.
I had a friend that got into one of those, and he was still trying to get 25 million. That somehow it got stuck down to somewhere in South America, he couldn't get it out of him. And he was entitled to the 25 million from this trade that's being one of the,
Mhm.
I don't know, whatever you call it. I don't know what investment he had in it, but he was entitled to 25 million, and he was still trying to get it, couldn't get it. And so, unless you have high political connections, I would not get involved in any of that. Like I had mentioned, we'd done that interview on where I showed those Wells Fargo boxes with those bonds.
Yeah.
Remember, I talked about a finder's fee.
Right.
And I had talked to this lady who was the financial minister from Knights office. She said, "Yeah." I said, "So I'll facilitate that. We'll take our cut, and to make things right," she said, we'll take that finder's fee and we'll put it into a trade so this party, whoever has these things, can get full value as they suppose." But she had political clout.
Right.
And like I said, and she told me, she said, "Unless you got some kind of political clout," she said, "you're wasting your time doing these things." Because the way she was going to handle it, she said, "Look, so here's how we do it. So we'll go get the 6%. We'll put that 6% into trade," because she could do that. She was capable of doing that, so she was going to put that in trade. She said, "Here's how it worked." She said, "Number one, said we'll get paid first."
Mm.
He said, and then the next part is, then these other monies will be available to this guy.
Mm.
And she said, and last, we'll pay off Treasury. So everybody gets paid before Treasury. She said, that's the only way you can handle it. She said, you won't get no money out of it. She said, if you allow Treasury to get paid first, she said, they'll take it all. It's a screwy world how that stuff works, and I'm glad I'm out of it. I went through all that. I saw all of it. I saw what had happened, and I'm just telling you,
Mm.
like she told me, because she did have political clout. He said, if you don't have political clout, you're not going to get nothing out of it.
Well,
So,
it's a lesson learned. People, like you said, need to do their research and not just believe whatever you see, written or, talked about on the internet. I mean, I always tell people, this is our, educated opinion on things, and, you know, uh, and you should do your own research, basically.
yeah, like I say, I'm talking about things first person.
Right. That's different. It's
I'm,
your experience.
I'm not talking about theories about what goes on with this. I'm talking about first person experiences, and things that I know about.
Mm.
And so again, hopefully all these things will come to an end with this reset and correction.
Mm. Right.
So I like to give people a little bit of hope, that things are going to get better because of a correction. Now, these things have to be corrected. These trading programs and so forth were created as a result of the Bretton Woods agreements and some of these things. It had an honorable intent when it was created. It got hijacked, it got subverted, crooks and criminals came in and took control of it.
Right.
But the funds to redeem these currencies that everybody is worried about, it is coming from the heritage accounts that was created by the Bretton Woods Agreement trading programs. That's where it's coming from. So those things are all under treaty, or they would have been, or they would have been subverted a long time ago. And there's three grandmothers, or they call them the three princesses, that physically have those treaties in their hands. And that's why nobody's been able to corrupt the heritage accounts. But those heritage funds that are in those accounts is what's going to be the source for these currency redemptions. And so, like I say, it's a strange world, strange program. But like I say, because of my own personal experiences and people I know, people I've dealt with, I can give these reports at a level that most people would never encounter. For instance, many people have collected up, Zimbabwe bonds and Iraqi dinars and all these different currencies and stuff, and they got their fingers crossed when they do it.
Mm.
But they don't know the genesis of where all these things come from. But I have a pretty good idea about a lot of that. I mean,
Right.
having talked to, having participated, and there's other experiences I've had that I'm not reporting on. And like I say, it's unfortunate that so many of these things have been hidden. I think it would be a better world if we had transparency so that people understand. Because you go dumping $1 billion or $1 trillion onto somebody's bank account, God only knows what they're going to do with it. Hopefully, everybody would do the right thing for the intention for which it's given. But why not just be transparent about this and give the history so that people know where it's all coming from?
Mm.
It's not just being made up. These currencies are going to be redeemed. The funds that are going to be used to redeem them are real. They're real, and they've been held in abeyance, under the control of this grandfather, this one they call O1, that James Gilliland talks about and has been in communication. And he has control of some of that. And then this Dr. Ray C. Dam that I reported on as the sole arbiter of the collateral accounts. He's one of the signatures that releases those funds so that the three princesses under treaty can go into the banks and release these accounts.
Mm.
And so, like I say, it's quite an involved story. I know pieces of the story. I don't know the full story, but I know pieces of it.
Right.
And so I'm trying to report these things under disclosure, under transparency, so that people would have some idea to believe that what's being done is being done properly and correctly, because it is. Now, the politicians are trying everything they can. The cabal, the deep state, and all these different ones are trying the best they can to steal all this again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's why we've had so long getting these things out to people, is because, again, they're having to deal with a bunch of the thieves. I mean, this last little rumor that started, things are going to be released. So all of a sudden, 37 bankers popped up, tried to steal it right off the top, and had to arrest them. And so a lot of the effort and a lot of the slowdown has simply been, to flush out
Right.
some of these crooks and criminals. I think they finally got in control of Wells Fargo now. I'm not really sure of it, but this crap goes on continuously. And so that's why it's been so slow, so many starts and stops for this currency redemption, because they had to flush out the crooks and the criminals, and they, for the most part, it seems they have. So again, like I say, we're coming up on yet another 3-day weekend. We got Labor Day weekend coming up, 3-day holiday. So we expect yet another attempt for the currency redemption to go forward on this 3-day holiday. We expect to see some significant things happen. Whether it will or not, I can't say. But, you just have to understand why. It hasn't come out yet, because I know a lot of people are discouraged. A lot of people are discouraged about this currency redemption, and I can understand that. But if you know a little bit of the background, why these things are happening, what's caused the problems, what has to happen in order for a successful redemption of those currencies to happen, then you can start to appreciate the effort that's going into it to make it happen. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been. And so I just wanted to, maybe we've kind of, rolled over into some other subjects, but I wanted to warn people about this latest thing, and I'm not criticizing Gary. Gary puts out a lot of good information, but somebody gave him a bunch of stuff, and in good faith, Gary put it up on his website and stuff. But I'm just warning people that it's not exactly as it appears. And I wouldn't trust, David or Russell, either one, as far as I can throw them. And I can't pick up very much now. I'm getting old.
Mm.
And so, in essence, I'm saying I don't trust them at all, period. And if you do, go for it. But I don't think, I want to get that involved in 90th degree Freemasonry, especially to come out of the Rothschilds in Europe. So just be forewarned. That's what you're getting into.
Okay. Morning. Heard. Thanks,
Morning, morning,
Winston.
morning. All right. Well, let's get on to some other things I wanted to talk about today. Like I say, I want to bring some things to people's attention. Now, this is what I would call, very advanced thinking. Like I say, this is, I'm exposing some of these things, not because, I'm encouraging anybody to do anything about this, but I wanted to expose some things at a fairly high level of understanding. And so to understand or to comprehend what I'm going to present, it takes a pretty good study. But if you don't know it's there, you don't know what to shoot for, is what I'm saying. See what I mean? And so, like I say, as a public educator, I'm very limited on what I can actually expose, because everybody hears what I have to say, and, from beginner to advanced student.
Right.
And so today I want to give some information that probably would not be understood by very many, but by exposing these things, it gives the student and those who are pursuing knowledge and so forth something to shoot for. So, once you get past the point of winning in traffic court, is there more out there? And the answer is, yeah, there is. And so I just want to expose some of that today so that people would have, something to work on. Because there have been some other things, as I'll point out, go along. So let me just screen share this one particular item here to kind of kick it off a little bit. I mean, aside from the old prospector. That was a funny story, wasn't it?
That was funny, Winston.
Yeah, it's pretty
You
darn
have a good
funny.
sense of humor.
Yeah. All right.
I appreciate it. I think the viewers do too.
Yeah, what I want to get into now is this subject of equity interest recovery. Because again, our equity, we've talked about in the past, concept that you referred to as the sweat equity.
Right, sweat equity, exactly.
And it's being stolen right and left from people. And so that turns people into slaves. And that is, it's no difference than the slaves on the plantation. And that is, if you work and you do not receive the benefit of your labors, then you're a slave.
Right.
That's what it amounts to. Now, this thing here, which I can't share, I just wanted to show this. Again, this is under copyright. I don't even know how I got it. Somebody sent me this. But anyway, they're talking about.
Okay, this is under copyright. I just have to make a note that this is for fair use. We're using it under fair use code. So it's for educational purposes. This is not intended to be distributed, and we're not making profit off of it.
Yeah, I will not distribute this. Like I say, I don't know how it comes. Somebody sent it to me. I put it on my computer, so I was looking at it the other day. You can probably contact these people if you're interested in following up on this. This is their stuff. It's not mine, but it has a lot of interesting points in it that I wanted to bring up for educational purposes, which are a part of the public domain.
Right.
And so I'm not giving away any secrets or anything. But anyway, it talks about exempt multi-purpose banking infrastructure, transaction planning and implementation, memorandum herein, EBI. Anyway, this group apparently is called Global Science and Technology Master Pure Contract Trust. So that's what they're doing here, is they're creating pure contract trusts And if you're interested in it, here's the people that you would contact if you're interested in their information. What that might be, I don't know.
Hmm.
And so, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because they bring up, in order to put their program across, they have a lot of history, they have a lot of information here, which is a part of the public domain. So I'm not giving away any technical secrets here. That's what it amounts to.
Well, on YouTube, there's definitely an issue of copyright, so you have to have
Yeah.
you have to be very clear that under fair use,
Yeah.
we're using this for education and analysis too. So.
Yeah, I didn't steal this. Somebody sent it to me.
Doesn't matter. It's the issue of copyright. So
Okay.
it just has to be, stated that we're not distributing this. It's for education purposes only.
Correct. All right. Anyway, there's some issues here about. I mean, they're quoting, Black's Law Dictionary to make their position. So they're explaining what it is they're doing with this pure contract trust situation. And so most of this information here is part of the public domain. But the thing that interested me, and I'll go into this with some others, is this equity interest recovery. And then when I get through talking about some of these other things, then we'll go into equity interest recovery, because we have done some work on this in the past. So there's a lot of information here that we're fairly familiar with. The obligations of the United States. Again, after 1933 and HJR 192 and all those kind of things, then the United States federal government became obligated for the debts of the citizens through the remedy of discharge. We've talked about this quite a bit. So anyway, you go into a discussion of sureties. We spend a great deal of time on sureties. Remember, we had quoted Hebrews 7:22, where it said that Jesus was the surety. And so the concept of suretyship is an important concept for people to understand. I'll just read this one. It says, again, under the 14th Amendment and numerous Supreme Court precedences, as well as in equity, private property cannot be taken or pledged for public use without just compensation or due process of law, such as eminent domain kind of things. Mm-hmm. The United States cannot pledge or risk the property and wealth of its private citizens. Private citizens. Let me emphasize again, private citizens.
Got it.
For any government purpose without legally providing them remedy to recover what is due to them on their risk. The United States Supreme Court said in United States versus Russell, private property, the Constitution provides, shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. Mm-hmm. The rights of a surety to recover on his risk. Now we're the surety. Remember, we signed the SS5 form, and that made us the trustee surety for the all capital letter name. All right. So the rights of a surety to recover on his risk or loss when standing for the debts of another was reaffirmed again as late as 1962. Then they have the court case there where it says sureties compelled to pay debts for their principal have been deemed entitled to reimbursement even without a contractual promise. So the people in this country, in essence, what we're saying, the people in this country are getting screwed right and left. Mm-hmm. Because they have no remedy to recover on their equity that they've had to stand for as the surety. Now, these are all commercial things. I mean, this, like I say, it's a little bit high knowledge, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. Then they go into a bunch of this business about, they get into some of this. Oh, gee, here we go again. They get into a lot of this information on postal technology and whatnot, which I don't really want to get into. Mm-hmm. Then they talk about pure contract trust. like I say, if you're wanting this kind of information, it would seem that this global science and technology master trust would be of the people to contact if you want to look into this. Uh, and I'm not promoting or anything else. I'm just saying, you know, if these people have this information and you feel like you want to get involved in some of this pure contract trust stuff, then perhaps that's people to contact. All right, then it goes into okay. Here's the part, because somebody, you know, I mean, I think Judge Anna had been doing a lot of work and putting out a lot of information about state citizenship versus U.S. citizenship. And these are some of the things we've addressed in the past, especially on that DVD, Reclaiming Your Status and Assets, where we show you how to create an ownership document for your body. Remember, we've talked about that quite a bit. Anyway, so they're using words here a little bit differently than how we've used them, but it's still the same concept. It says an American citizen is sovereign. Here in America, sovereignty rests with the people. Then they quote the Supreme Court case where it says it will be admitted on all hands that with the exception of the powers granted to the states and the federal government through the constitutions, the people of the several states are unconditionally sovereign within their respective states. And so some of this information I think that Judge Ann has been putting out, you know, had justification for it. Now, well, I don't want to get into that. Anyway, so the, you know, go into quite a bit of the Supreme Court cases and decisions that have been made, making a distinction between an American citizen and a U.S. citizen. Now, we've talked about this. The U.S. citizen is simply a common stockholder of the U.S. Incorporated that Trump is basically getting rid of. What's going to come out the other side of this, we don't know. You remember this last report or two where we talked about, we don't know what's going to happen when the SARA comes in. They won't put it out so we can read it. And you know, like I say, I'm just a little bit upset that you know that they're making moves to install some of the provisions of NASARA as it appears. It seems that way, but without actually having access to the NASARA Act itself and be able to read it for myself, I get just a little bit agitated. Because, like I said, I'm not willing to, you know, we've had a system that's put in place ever since 1928 that got corrupted.
Yep.
Now they say, okay, now we're going to have a correction here. We're going to put in a new system under NASARA. Is that going to get corrupted, or is it already being corrupted? We don't know because we can't see it.
Right. That's the problem.
And so, like I said, you know, from my own personal point of view, I'm not willing to trade one tyranny for just another tyranny.
No.
So tell us what it is. Show us what it is.
Right.
Don't be implementing parts of that as if it is NASARA. Because we don't know whether it is or not. Let's have a little transparency with this stuff.
Well, Winston, I think they're talking about this new quantum financial system, which I don't think can, you know, I don't know if it can be hacked.
Well, that's part of it. That's part of it. But I'll go back to the Constitutional Convention, which was held in secret.
Right.
That was a Scottish Rite secret Constitutional Convention. And then finally, after they got done with it, they finally put it out for the public so they could look at it.
Well, the public version.
The public version. But again, at the very least, you know, in the 1700s, they was willing to tell the people what it was. But now we got more secrets going on with this NASARA, you know, business and stuff, which I believe in its initial inception what was headed in the right direction, but we want to see it.
Right, but I think back then there were less people who were literate, so they weren't capable of really reading it, first of all, and understanding it. So probably, things got by that maybe shouldn't have because of that. But we have a much greater literate population today, and
Yeah.
I think that's probably also the reason why they don't want to make this transparent at this point, because much too much scrutiny would be placed on it, and it would be, questioned.
Well, I would hope they would question it.
Yeah, I hope so too. But they don't look. The powers that be, aren't asking for our input on any of it. So,
That's what I'm saying.
mhm,
And I really don't like that.
yeah,
I really don't like it. Like I say, fool me once, shame on me. I
mhm,
mean, you, but you
yeah,
fool me twice, and shame on me.
mhm,
And I don't want to be fooled by any of this. And so, but how can I support or oppose something that I can't even see?
mhm,
That's my point. And so, like I say, our history is, replete
mhm,
with all this secrecy and stuff that's going on. I mean, the Constitutional Convention was held in secret.
mhm,
Finally, they come out and said, okay, here's what we decided on. Fine. Then in 1871, we had this other problem with this secret, government out of Washington, D.C. And, it's caused untold problems. And finally, here in these last, number of years, people have been able to decipher what happened and put it out so people can understand it. And then we've tried to expose it, on Solutions in Commerce, GoldFish reports, and a lot of people are exposing it so that people can see it. Because how can you go on to something better if you don't know what was? And so, we have all these different things that are ever so important. And so again, it's important for people to understand what the difference would be between an American national, or what we would call a private citizen, and a U.S. citizen, and the implications of it, because you can't solve a problem until you know what it is. So with Solutions in Commerce, once we found out what it was, then we went to work trying to solve some of the problems. And I think, by and large, we and others have come up with some pretty good technology to solve some of these problems so that people don't have to be slaves. Uh, anyway, like I say, in this thing here, they have quite a bit of history to justify, what their position is. So if people want to investigate that further, I just showed you where to go and look for it.
okay, very good.
And I'm
Thank
not
you,
getting a
Winston.
commission from these people for exposing this or putting it up
I
for
didn't
them.
even see the name of anybody on there. I mean, maybe I missed
Well,
it.
it had the organization's name that
I
was
didn't
on the
see it.
copyright.
Okay, well, I didn't see it, so I
Well,
didn't.
yeah, it was. Let me put it back up again.
It's okay. I don't want to. I'll look at it later. It's okay.
All right.
It's okay. I just want to. It didn't really stand out. That's all. It's okay.
All right.
So it's interesting, though. I mean, again, this is some stuff, information that you just can't start at. You don't. This isn't a starting point of
No.
yeah, solution.
Now, while I want to go further, this other stuff I'm going to put up is not under copyright, so I don't feel any worry about any kind of violation for that. I think it's this article right here. Yeah, I don't know who wrote this article, where it came from. I just had it on my computer. Anyway, this is notice of equity, interest recovery to principal and surety. Notice of the potentiality of crimes being committed. And so in this one here, what they're doing, this is a notice of intent to do a equity interest recovery. And again, they go through, a lot of
Mhm,
definitions and so forth, coupons.
mhm,
See, in essence, what this does right here, what this notice does, it's in support of accepted for value. Accepted for value, again, as I've mentioned, is private administrative process. And so this article right here, as in the form of a notice, which could be sent if you wanted to, with your acceptances and so forth. It's the justification for what we're doing, because again, uh, accepted for value is equity interest recovery. That's what it is. And so acceptance for value has been used on many different situations and so forth. And it's been a fight and it's been a struggle. I mean, especially when you're dealing with vendors, when you're dealing with banks and mortgages. It's been a hell of a fight. And some have been successful with it, and some haven't. But anyway, the concept of what we're trying to do here is that we as the surety have an exemption. Remember, we talked about in some of the earliest reports about how the exemption was created because of the original issue.
Yes.
And so that means exempt from taxation. Anything in the public, where they're requiring some kind of adjustment of an account. Anytime you see that, if you'll just use the word tax,
yeah,
it's a tax. And like I pointed out, a mortgage payment is a tax. A traffic ticket is a tax.
Sure, because of benefit privilege.
Yeah. And so it's a benefit privilege. I mean, it's a tax on the benefit privilege or whatever it is you're involved in. And so like I say, as soon as we can, let's get those first reports up so that people understand the original issue, the exemption, how all those things happen, because I really can't go back and repeat all that again.
No, it's all in there. Yeah.
We don't need to.
Yeah.
But again, this is how the system is. This is how the system has existed all this time. And so now we're looking for a correction. What, like this other report we did, what's it going to be like on the other side of NESARA? And I was kind of projecting, using my imagination, because again, I don't have NESARA to look at, but I was kind of projecting what it might be like on the other side. And I don't know at what level of knowledge the powers that be, as it were, I don't know what their level of knowledge is, and I really wish they would consult with me on some of the decisions they're making. There's a few of us, and probably you can count that number on one hand. There's a few of us who do understand these things, and as far as I know, we're not being consulted. And that's irritating.
Right. We go back to, let's see, habeas corpus is up. Yeah.
The very first Country Road report, I think about maybe like 115 or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's not up yet. It's coming though. It's coming. It's in the next batch. So the next batch will be up. So take about within the next week, it'll be up. We'll have it all done. But it's,
so let's get that up, because people to really comprehend some of my anxiety here with some of these things, you have to go back and listen to that first report where we started talking about original issues, the exemption, how all those things came about. And it's about as good as explanation as I've ever done. I mean, I went back and listened to it after we done it, and I was proud of it. I mean, I was proud of the information and the way that I presented it.
Yeah, we have the history of money and the plan of the experts up. We have bonding of corporations. I mean, the title doesn't say everything that's in there, but usually fraud by omission we have, which is talking about the SS5 and how we exchanged our unalienable rights for benefit privilege. Hoodwinking. Okay, so lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff.
So again, this information here, if you understand, and I'll send this to you. You can put this up.
Okay, hold on. The one that we have marked as the IRS organization, it was labeled IRS terrorist organization, and of course they did not like that. They put a strike on it, so I had to change the name so it wouldn't be flagged. So sorry. There we go.
All right. Yeah, that's fine. What have you got to do to get the information out to the people?
Yeah, no, we've got good stuff up there. We're good.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, this one article here I'll send to you so people can study it. I would suggest that if you want to understand accepted for value, if you go to my website on our product page,
Mhm.
I have a accepted for value series.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about what? Oh, she
Okay,
done something.
no, it keeps. I have an iPad next to me that I was using to
Oh,
reference some things we're talking about, and it keeps starting to play videos. So
oh well.
sorry about the sound if it gets onto the recording. It
Anyway,
might.
when you start, yeah, when you start talking about vouchers, you have to understand about coupons. Uh, okay, so I've highlighted this little item here, maybe something we want to look at. It says when an investor buys a bond, he or she becomes a creditor of the issuer. Now, how many people have bought Zimbabwe bonds? A lot of people.
Many people.
Okay, so when an investor buys a Zimbabwe bond, he or she becomes the creditor of the issuer. So when you redeem those things, you're redeeming them as the creditor. Okay, it says, however, the buyer does not gain any kind of ownership rights to the issuer, unlike in the case of equities. On the one hand, a bondholder has a greater claim on an issuer's income than the shareholder in the case of financial distress. See, this is what this everybody trying to get in control of Zimbabwe. Chinese trying to get in control, the United States trying to get in control of them, all this kind of stuff. But in order to get in control of the assets in Zimbabwe, what do they have to do to the creditors who have bought the bonds? They got to redeem the bonds.
Redeem them. Yeah.
And that's what this Zim redemption is all about. Because those who have bought those bonds, I don't care if they paid 10 cents for them. They become the creditors of the issuer, who is Zimbabwe. So if I'm the creditor of Zimbabwe, then Zimbabwe is my debtor.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's basic concepts, the people, maybe not have considered.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand why things are being done the way that they're being done. And, and like I say, we kind of just gloss over everything as if, this or that, but I'm just trying to put information out to people so you'll understand what's happening. What's happening. Okay, let's see. I have said, okay, it says your people just need to submit my coupon. Okay, so they're talking about, coupons. In other words, somebody sends you, like I say, a mortgage payment. Don't they send you a coupon?
They do.
Uh-huh. See, we had this problem years ago with the IRS, way back in, I don't know, the early 2000s. The IRS was sending out presentments and they wouldn't put a coupon on them. And so we started hammering at them for it, and then all of a sudden they came out with coupons on their presentments. Because it was illegal what they were doing. They were sending out requests for money, they hadn't put a coupon on it. So, like I say, there's been quite an evolution.
Well, can you define coupon for people so they understand why that would be important? Is it easy to explain?
Coupon, a negotiable certificate attached to a bond that represents a sum of interest due.
Sum of interest, yeah.
Yeah, number 2 definition, a negotiable certificate that can be detached and redeemed as needed, such as through accepted for value. See, and so, like I say, in the early times when we were trying to work with the IRS on some of their presentments and so forth, we kept writing back to them and said, well, thanks for your presentment stuff, but you didn't attach a coupon. So finally they started doing it. So then our acceptance for value of the IRS presentment was much, much easier because we didn't have to create a coupon for them.
So that's why we have, detach at the line at every bill
Exactly.
that you receive in the mail.
Exactly.
That's the coupon. Hmm.
That's the coupon, which represents the interest due on whatever contract or presentment that it is.
Mm.
See? Yeah. So, like I say, people need to get just a little bit better informed. But see, this again, I trust that you have not given me a fraudulent coupon.
Mm.
And if they, I have to say that most of the coupons they send, for instance, if they send a coupon for a mortgage payment and it has, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000 on there, that's fraudulent.
Mm.
That's why we always tell people, if you're going to do an acceptance on their coupon that they send to you, scratch out or strike out any kind of sum that they put on it, because that's fraudulent. Like I say, to get in the mindset of this,
Mm.
you really need to, do a little bit of study. That's why I recommend to people to get those DVDs on acceptance for value, so you understand these concepts. Now again, what's going to happen on the other side of NACCURATE? I don't know. But do I think that acceptance for value would be something on the other side of NACCURATE? And I would have to say yes. Again, it goes right to the currency.
Mm-hmm.
I played that little mind game with you one time. I asked you what was the difference between Federal Reserve notes and United States notes, and I said it's the interest. That's the only difference. Because again, we're not getting away from negotiable instruments. We're going to still be using notes, which are discharge items. And can you apply a private credit to a public debit? Yeah, you can. So would acceptance for value still be viable on the other side of the NACCURATE? It will be, as long as we're using notes as discharge items. See, we're still using negotiable instruments. Let's see, then they go into tender of payment uh, under the Uniform Commercial Code. And that is something that people need to understand. And let's see if there's something else here. All right. So again, I can send this to you, and then people can look at this for knowledge.
Okay.
Is this something that they would be able to use? It depends on you. I never suggest anybody use anything they don't understand. And, how do you get an
Exactly.
understanding?
No, yeah.
Study.
And a lot of people who, you have to say too, I mean, a lot of people who haven't understood really how to use the technology that you have and have tried to use it and did not succeed, it's not your problem. You know,
Well,
you're,
it's more than anything else. It's an energetic problem.
yeah, but it's not your problem, because they have to take responsibility for the
Yeah.
the knowledge and making sure they understand it correctly. And it's something that takes, I would say, years, really, years to kind of
Yeah.
understand. You
Like I
can't,
say, yeah.
depending on how quick you learn, but it's something that you really have to understand well.
All right. Now here is, if you get to the point where you think you can handle some of this, here is actually a court pleading, an example
Hmm.
of a court pleading that someone could use, for interest recovery, for equity interest recovery. In other words, they stole your equity when
Hmm.
they used your exemption without your permission.
Or another example would be sweat equity. So if
Sweat
they
equity, yeah, it's the
where
same thing.
right,
Yeah,
but where
it's
they did
something
not
you
compensate,
produced.
right, that were not compensated for adequately.
Yeah, and so if you go into traffic court and they say, "Well, we're going to fine you $200, and we only accept cash," and you go give them
Right.
cash. Okay, now what? How are you going to get your equity back?
Yeah.
So here is an example of a court pleading that you might be able to make work for you. So I just give it as an example here. Uh, and I'll send this to you. People can look at it and think they want to give it a shot. They can go. They can go for it.
Hmm.
So again, we're coming right down the middle of the page. So this is notice of equity interest recovery to principal and surety. This is an affidavit of obligation.
Hmm.
So John H. Smith as the affiant versus, Mary Jones, clerk of the court, as the respondent. All right, now we're going to do this in affidavit form. So it's Utah State, blah, blah, blah. So I, John H. Smith, affiant, do state that I'm over the age of 21 years, competent in first-hand knowledge, and do say that. Now, again, I produced this. I created this little document here as a template way before we had done the reclaiming your status and assets concept. I might change this a bit, for those who have actually, accomplished that. So again, affiant is competent to state, affiant first-hand knowledge, affiant affirms that all the facts are true, blah, blah, blah. Affiant is the only authorized agent for the straw man. Only authorized agent. Now, again, as you go back on the evolution of what we've done, how could I make a statement like that? Because of the UCC1 financing statement that I created and recorded, which is a lien. I'm first in line on anything that happens to my straw man. So I can make those kind of claims from a very strong position were I to make them. Others who make this kind of claim is a bit weaker, but you can still make the claim. Let them disprove it. All right, so affiant's the only authorized agent for John H. Smith, straw man, and the 5th District Court is an alias for judicial courts of the state of Utah. You remember I told that story? I went looking for the 5th District Court on Dun and Bradstreet. Couldn't find it. But what I did find was judicial courts of the state of Utah. So I'm making these people understand that I know, I've pierced the corporate veil. I know who they are. In essence, that's what I'm doing here.
Okay.
I'm piercing the corporate veil. So John H. Smith is the original issuer of the credit on debt instrument, commonly known and identified as claim, whatever it was, maybe the traffic ticket or whatever. And then John H. Smith, the real man, is the first lien holder against the straw man. Then I say, see Exhibit 1, UCC financing statement. So I would have included a copy of that UCC 1 on state form that I had recorded. And so if you've done that, that's what I'm talking about here. If you've only filed on the national form, it's not quite as strong a position, but it is a valid position. It is a valid position as far as being a lien holder against the straw man. So anyway, in my case, John A. Smith is the first lien holder against the straw man. And then I, have an exhibit to show the UCC1 financing statement that gives me that claim. And then item number 8, court does business with the debtor, because again, the straw man is always going to be the debtor on whatever kind of UCC1 financing statement you use. Okay, so the straw man is always the debtor and the real man is always the secured party. So the court is doing business with the debtor, making the court a debtor in fact to the secured party, John H. Smith. The court is a corporate fiction doing business for profit and gain under a grant of limited liability insurance evidenced by its tax identification number. Now, does that court that you're dealing with have a tax identification number? They do.
They do. They have a D&B rating as well.
Yeah, you usually you can just call them and ask them what it is. Yeah, you can call the clerk and say, "Hey, I need your tax identification number." They say, "What do you need that for?" Well, I'm filling out my tax forms, and I need to get your number because I paid the traffic ticket over here. I need to, blah 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 on my tax form. Usually they'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Or you can find it other ways. Like you say, you can go on down to Bradstreet and get it. Anyway, the court's doing business under tax identification number, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the original original issue price of $10,000 for this claim that was paid was accepted on January 10th, blah, 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 by 5th District Court, and is filed on Internal Revenue Service 1099 OID. Now we're getting into some real deep technology, which I'm not willing to teach. You'll have to find that from other people. But anyway, you can go file 1099 OID and register it with the IRS. And again, I'm not teaching that. People get so damn confused with that stuff. I just ain't gonna have people come back and ask me questions about it. So if you want to find out about that, if you want to learn about it, there's a lot of information on the internet. Go and study it.
Yeah.
Now, do you have to do that to make this work? No. But it's one position that you could use. Anyway, the creditor, and actually that should be, well, I'll leave it like it is. Creditor John A. Smith accepted the claim for case number such and such. In other words, it did an acceptance for value. And so there's another exhibit. Okay, so for the assessed value of the taxes owed, again, taxes, you know, a court judgment is simply a tax. That's all it is. It says there being no controversy in the court on claim number such and such, this court has lost subject matter jurisdiction and must vacate any orders or judgments made. And see, we're still in the affidavit now.
Well, subject matter jurisdiction, because is it in the right, is it filed under equity?
There's no controversy. If there's no controversy, then there's nothing to be adjudicated. They lose subject matter jurisdiction.
Oh, that's okay. So I just wanted to make sure, because I think there's times when people are not sure when you file these in court. Is it always? It's always a civil, or is it chancery? I mean,
well, this happened here. Well, I'm not going to talk about chancery.
Okay. Right.
Because now you're getting into equity and all kinds of different things. But,
right. That's why I'm trying to make sure that people understand where and how to file these things when they use them. You just don't bring, unless you're talking about just traffic court. You know, that's a different.
Well, this is a civil case.
Civil. Okay.
Yeah. So because there's no controversy, why is there not any controversy? Because you've done the acceptance for value and filed all kinds of documents and so forth with the IRS. See, we use the IRS, you know, a lot for different things. A lot of people, you know, just go rabbit when you just say our IRS. We've used the IRS for a lot of things over the years. But anyway, there's no controversy because we've done the acceptance. We've done a set-off on the taxes. So the taxes have been reduced to zero. So there's no controversy. If there's no controversy, there's no subject matter jurisdiction. I mean, that logic should be, you know, quite plain. Now we're going into another part of it here, called notice to rebut, or any alternative to confess judgment. All right. So again, this is an affidavit. We're going to give them the opportunity, the respondent, we're going to give the respondent an opportunity to rebut this affidavit, or in the alternative, if they don't rebut it, it's called confession of judgment. They're agreeing to it if they don't rebut it. See what I mean? All right. So court is demanded to stop and correct, or in the alternative, to rebut with positive evidence that this affidavit is false or erroneous. Now, when they stop and correct, what do they got to do? Give you the money that they vouchered the U.S. Treasury for. Remember I told about that traffic case, you know, when the judge didn't want to get into it with me?
Yes.
So he said if I don't plead no contest, he'd make it go away. And I made him promise to close the case. He did. He wrote right across and gave me a copy of a case closed. That's confession of judgment. I went home expecting them to send me a check. And they never did. So that's when I went downtown trying to find the county comptroller to see where my money was. Just as an experiment. The people down in that county, they didn't like that much altogether anyway. So.
But Winston does for fun.
Well, I'm just trying to prove a point, you know. I mean, I don't care about the money. First off, they never got no money out of me on that traffic ticket in the first place. But they did voucher my, you know, using my exemption, which I object to. I didn't give them permission. See, on that particular court case, I had not done an acceptance on it.
Mm,
I had not. And so they went ahead, put in a voucher, using my exemption, so they wouldn't have to pay the tax on the money the treasury give to them. And
mm.
so, like I say, people listen to this, they're going to say, boy, that Winston is crazy and all that, man, talking all this kind of stuff. No, I understand exactly what I'm talking about. I understand what I'm talking about at a fairly high level, fairly high level. And so, no, I'm not just, making gibberish up here. I'm telling you how things actually are.
Mm.
See? And so, like I say, it takes a little bit of study. It takes a little bit of time, to work this. But when we first started this whole conversation, I said, hey, this is high level thinking.
All right.
This is something, if you can't think at that level, this is something to shoot for.
Right. This is like PhD level classes at this point, and you
Yeah,
really
some of
need
it. You
to,
might say
yeah,
that.
you
Yeah.
really need to have a good understanding of where, you've been, what the foundation is to all of this,
Yeah.
so you can really understand how this is used, how useful and what a utility it is. It's,
Yeah, like I say, sometimes we just have to go past fixing traffic ticket problems. We just have to, and so this is way past traffic court,
sure.
way past traffic court.
Hmm.
But it's something that people can shoot for, at least to understand it, if not actually to implement it.
Hmm.
So anyway, let's see. Court is demanded to stop and correct,
Hmm.
which means send me a check for all this money you vouchered on this. I just have a number $10,000 on here just for a number.
Hmm. Example.
Yeah. Anyway, item 15, failure to rebut point for point with positive evidence sworn true, correct, and complete, not misleading, truth, and the whole truth, nothing but the truth, will be conclusive evidence of the truth of this affidavit. And the court confesses that affiant will forfeit, seize, execute all bonds, insurance policies, and the like of the court.
Hmm.
They're giving me my permission to go seize all their bonds.
Notice
Court
to
will
rebut.
confess being the court will confess to be being filed on the UCC1 financing statement as debtor.
Yeah.
See, you can't just go put somebody on the UCC1 financing statement without their permission, or unless you've done some administrative process that would justify it. And people
Uh-huh.
get prosecuted for doing that kind of foolishness. I would too. But with this right here, failure to rebut is their confession that I can put them on a UCC financing statement as a debtor. See? So I'm getting
Okay.
their permission to do it. Okay, so court confesses that affiant will forfeit, seize, and execute all bonds, insurance policies, and the like of the court, and court will confess to being filed on UCC1 financing statement as a debtor to John A. Smith in the amount of the true bill contained below. Oh dear, we're going to put a true bill on this? Yeah. All right, here we go. Like I said at the very first, if you look up here at the very first, what did I say this is? This is an affidavit of obligation. This is a commercial lien, folks.
Commercial lien. There you go.
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Hmm.
So this is an affidavit of obligation. This is a commercial lien. Someone will put a true bill in accounting right in the thing.
Hmm. I guess one of the things that would be helpful to people, I think, Winston, would be is if we took a real, which is what you're doing right now, but let's just say a person, just on a conceptual level, let's just say somebody did some, agreed to some kind of an arrangement where you were going to do work for somebody and you were expecting that it was going to benefit you at some point, that you were going to get some kind of compensation at some point. Okay. And it didn't happen. So we're talking about sweat equity. So you were going to, spend, a year cutting somebody's grass. You do it for a year, and a year later, they're like, "Oh, I don't, something came up. I don't know.
Well, this
I'm
comes
not going
up
to pay
all
you."
the time. I'm constantly
Right,
getting, emails from people asking me this very same question.
right,
And so again, if it's just a small matter, that's one thing. But like I say, I worked in the construction industry for a long time,
hmm
and before a construction project actually started, I mean,
yeah,
the contractor had to put up 25% in cash and get bonds for the rest of it. So if it involves high level money,
yeah,
then you need to make sure there's some kind of escrow established.
right. For
Because
construction,
sometimes people call me up and say, well, I went and did a job for this construction company over here and they won't pay me. I said, well, go to the bonding company, they'll pay you.
right.
They will. If the contractor's not going to pay you, go to their bonding company, they'll pay you. So again, just back to this admiralty thing. You remember we talked about
Mhm.
the ships, docket and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, that was an interesting report. A lot
Oh yeah,
of
we had
people.
a good time with that one, didn't we?
Yep.
And that was pretty simple. I
hmm
mean, that wasn't highfalutin at all. That's pretty simple, just common logic.
Yeah.
Anyway, in this true bill here, we're going to go for treble damages. Uh, let's just say the original claim of 10,000. So we use the old Testament formula to calculate, which is justifiable.
hmm
That is, if I kill your cow, then you have to replace my cow and give me 3 cows punitive. So again, here let's just say that whatever the problem was of $10,000, now we're going to make it into 40, and that's justifiable. I mean, I see people sometimes they use what was it? That one court case out of Florida, I think, is called something other versus Pagliana, and they jack up the prices about 200 times. That's kind of
hmm
that's kind of. I mean, they're justified in it because they have a court case.
hmm
And that was the judgment. It's called Trafficant versus Pagliaro, I think. I got it on my computer someplace. I don't
Okay.
use that. I think the Old Testament is,
hmm
you know, a pretty good way to handle that. Anyway, then we go into the surety for the true bill. The surety for the true bill is the private assets of the court and all officers and employees, assets of the court who have had the benefit of office. In other words, they got paid from the money that was stolen using my exemption. Okay, so the surety for the true bill is don't just scare people. The surety for the true bill is the private assets of the court and all officers and employees' assets of the court who have had the benefit of office, that is, plundered, who have converted the equity interest of the principal, John A. Smith, and failed to return
hmm
the interest to the principal. Again, we're involved in what here? Equity interest recovery. Now, could this be used? Well, again, it depends on your skill level. I wouldn't encourage anybody to go do something like this unless they had some kind of skill level to where they could make it work. All
Right.
you're going to do is piss people off if you're going to do this. You can't stand for it.
Right. When he says stand for it, it means you can't defend it, you can't explain it, and because
Yeah,
what happens is when you go into the courtroom, they question you and they want to make sure you understand how and why you're using it and what's related to it, so you can stand your ground. Basically, is what Winston's saying. So they will test you on this. Expect to be tested, and if you're not ready to be tested on it, don't use it. It's just that
yeah.
simple, right, Winston?
All right. Well, we kind of
Getting to
ended our
time.
time,
Yeah.
uh, and we've covered a variety of different things today. I hope it's useful to people. Like I say, some of it's pretty high level understanding, but it's
Yeah.
something to shoot for. It's something to
Right.
shoot for. And
Absolutely,
then
Winston.
then the practicality of equity, interest recovery, and all that kind of thing. You can do it. It's possible. And so I'm just trying to give some ideas, perhaps provide a template or two that people can use to make it work for them, whatever you're trying to do, and so forth. So people keep asking, well, how do we get justice? Well,
Right.
here you go. if you've had equity stolen from you, here's one way that you could go about doing it. And again, it takes a certain skill level working in the civil courts and stuff. And like I say, I did create that one a DVD on civil court. People might want to get that. Kind of look through it and understand a little bit of how we're doing some of the things that we do, so you get an understanding of how to operate in the courts and all these kind of things. So again, like I say, we try to be proactive, and that is we're trying to solve problems. And problems keep coming up, time and time and time again. And people, contact me, emails, and all these kind of things. And so the solutions in commerce is exactly what it says it is. We're trying to provide solutions to problems that people generally, would encounter. Now, some people might not encounter a lot of this stuff, but a lot of people do. Let me put it that way. A lot of people do. And so they're looking for some way to resolve these problems, especially we got people who are destitute and have no way to recover their equity. And it was stolen from them.
That's right.
These banks and these courts, like we pointed out, are doing nothing but stealing your equity. That's all they're doing. And I've given plenty of evidence to show that. So how do we solve some of these things? And so that's what I'm trying to do, is show you some of the things that could be done to solve some of these problems.
Well, it's very helpful, Winston, and also I think that again, we just have to we have to reiterate that you have to start your
Yeah.
studies and understand it, and then research each step until you understand each one. Take each of the videos and understand it until you can teach it.
Yeah.
And then you're ready to use it.
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, we're not trying to be hateful or mean or anything like that, but
Yeah.
People face real problems.
Yeah.
I mean, their livelihood is being taken from them, and all kinds unjustly. I mean, if somebody's got it coming, people sometimes contact me and say, "Well, I got this problem over here," and I finally found out they had it coming. I won't do anything to help them for that. If you got it coming, you got it coming. If you got a licking coming, I ain't going to intervene.
Well, in other words, so like when YouTube deletes people's channels that they
We
use.
do something, don't we?
Yeah. So because you rely on that for income, and then when they delete your channel, you lose the income for people who monetize it. And in case of GoldFish Report, we never monetized our channel. It was not about making money. That it was,
Yeah.
This is a public service. That's what this is. This is public service. I believe in public service. I believe we should all be involved in public service of one kind or another, because it's for the greater good. So we're definitely very service to others on Goldfish Report. That's it. There's never a question about that. However, it was harmful that our site was our channel was deleted, and then of course WordPress has now gone and done the same thing, and I think they're going to find themselves, these are huge antitrust issues. Before the president even said antitrust, we were talking about it being antitrust on our reports and even on the POTUS reports, because of course it's antitrust. You have a trust, you enter into a trust agreement with these people, and when you're relying on their hardware, or whatever you want to call it, to earn an income, and then they can just arbitrarily delete your channel.
I don't like
really
the word
ruining your business.
I don't like that word trust. I would say anti-monopoly. They should rename the Sherman Antitrust to Sherman Anti-Monopoly.
Yeah, but there's other issues too. I mean, even if they're monopolizing, I mean, there's then the free speech issue that's involved, and there's also, just deleting our intellectual property.
Yeah.
That's,
it's not. I don't like the word trust used that way.
no,
That's what I'm saying.
I understand, but I
I
think there
think
is.
the proper word is monopoly.
Right, but I do think there's a trust relationship too, that you're not going to destroy our business once we build it on your channel.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
there is an implied trust there, absolutely. Or nobody would take, or what they're not doing then is disclosing what the risk actually is, that you're going to be, but then 5, 6, 7 years later, they arbitrarily just start creating rules and just deleting your reports that you did years ago. Like Jim Fetzer, Jim is very difficult to find on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so his name comes up and, instantly it's almost as if they have voice recognition and know if he's on someone's video talking
Yeah.
and just ban videos because of it. But Winston, thank you as always for your wisdom. We all
Well, we need to end with a little bit of.
okay, good.
So let's refer back to one of our present things. Who is your real friend? And I'll send this to you. You can put it out so people can have it. This is really fun.
Well, it's true because dog backwards is God. So you have, the
There you
spirit of
go.
God in your dog. Who wouldn't love you more?
But if you lock up your wife in the trunk with a dog and you open the trunk after an hour, who's your friend? Because the wife is not going to be your friend.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah, we just had to laugh a little chuckle. Like I say,
That's
we
funny.
got pretty darn serious about a lot of stuff. So we need
Yeah.
we need to end with a little chuckle. So I think that's good.
Well, thank you, and also thank you for your word of caution in the beginning of the program.
Oh yeah,
It's just a word of caution based on your firsthand experience. So
yeah.
it's just something you wanted people to be aware of. Not all information is meant to be beneficial and meant to yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm definitely against black magic. I don't want none of that going around.
right, and Winston's not suggesting that there is in this case, but there has been
Yes,
in the
I am
past.
suggesting there is.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that GoldFish Report's not saying that. Winston's
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah,
That's what
Winston's
I'm trying
saying
to distinguish this, okay? When GoldFish Report's not, saying that there is, because I don't have GoldFish Report, and the GoldFish Report entity, of media is not
I'll take the hit. Don't
saying,
worry about it.
yeah, we don't have firsthand knowledge, but um, Winston it does. So that's just to make that distinction. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, Winston, thank you so much. It's been what a heck of a week. We don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of really incredible developments coming up soon
yeah,
for people to watch. We have a 3-day weekend, so this is Labor Day weekend. So, are
yeah.
you having any picnics, Winston?
Oh, I don't know so much about that, but I will make a greater effort to be friendly to my dog.
And your wife.
I don't think it'll work that way.
Yeah, no. Okay. Well, thanks again, Winston, and thanks for your sense of humor. We really need it.
Oh yeah, you gotta laugh a little bit.
Yeah, I really want to do Winston's comedy hour. So one, just once, just one special. That's all. It'd be pretty funny because I really
Yeah.
and his and your what is it, the riddles, which I didn't get, but it's
Oh
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm on it now though. I you got to think way outside the box for these things.
yeah, yeah. You gotta have, like I say, you gotta have a little fun. Laughter is really good medicine.
It is
We
indeed.
we probably don't laugh enough,
Yeah.
but so like I say, we're in serious times and everything. And if you don't take time to have a funny story or have a good laugh about something, you're really missing. So it's good for us to do that.
Yeah, so laughter is the best medicine. So I'm glad we can provide a little bit of that and a little bit of education at the same time. So thanks, Winston. Have a great weekend. Happy Labor Day. And this is the official end of the the summer season, holiday season, and back to school starts for the kids in the United States.
Yeah,
And
people don't know the history of Labor Day holiday itself, but it's actually a union holiday.
right, it is
If
union.
it wasn't for the unions, we wouldn't be having Labor Day weekend. So you at least thank the unions for that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you, Winston. And to all of our viewers, again, thank you for your support. As always, I love these people who are sending Trish. You're always sending me, she knows who she is. She's always sending me videos on
Yeah,
Facebook that I post on the news page and all these other wonderful people. I just love you all. Really, really, I truly do. And that's why we're doing it for you. So I'm glad that people are doing what they can and they take initiative. They send stories. Those who can donate and help to keep supporting this and all of the maintenance and infrastructure needed to do these reports. And there's a lot of subscriptions and um, to all this technology that allows us to do these reports and get it done and bring it to you. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all on Monday for another. We'll be back on Tuesday, not Monday, but on Tuesday for a POTUS report, and also a very special report coming up next week with researcher, very interesting researcher Robert Stanley, who will be doing an interesting interview with, and Winston will be joining me on that. And so that's going to be very interesting. And we also have another very special interview coming up pretty soon with Laura Eisenhower and Patty Greer again, the Steel Magnolias. And so we're really going to have and enjoy presenting that. There's a lot of updates that they have as well. So we'll be presenting all of this to our viewers. And to viewers who may have had trouble with the Patreon page, please email me and let me know. We haven't had any trouble. We weren't aware of it, but we just recently were made aware from a viewer who was having trouble. And I just have to say, we are so shadow banned that, I mean, even in my own tablets and devices, Goldfish Report doesn't come up unless I'm logged in when I do a search. So it's very interesting. We're quite shadow banned, but thanks for staying with us and for supporting us. And we appreciate also your feedback. So have a great weekend. And this concludes